posture. So, posture. Top is a collapsed sling, bottom is a developed sling. Okay? We can see that if we were to draw a line from like the hip down to the point of shoulder, it's like a downhill. It's like, but this horse, it's almost more level. Okay? And you can see that this horse is standing, they look like this. This point is like so down compared to this. And we have been trained to think dysfunction is normal. I mean, we go out and you see sale horse videos, you see your horse, you just see your horse, and we buy them and we go, oh, well, look, that's a nice looking horse, but we have been so trained to see the dysfunction as normal that when we see a horse that's actually in good functionality, we don't really notice the difference until we know otherwise. But we don't even know, you look at that horse and go, okay, well, it's just a gray horse, but you wouldn't notice what's going on. So, posture. We want horses take their center of gravity, we want it to be here, right here. A lot of horses put their center of gravity right here, their poll and their neck. Okay, got a massage person. Oh, your horse's pole's so tight. It's always tight. Well, it's because the horse is literally like pulling himself along with his head. Okay, and he's like literally having to pull himself forward with his front legs. Front end, like we say, they're front end heavy, but it's because they don't have the strength to lift themselves up in the front. So what's happening is they're using the hind end can and should lift the front end up if the front end is developed properly. What the hind end should not do is continue to carry the front end around. Because the horse, when you ask them to go, they should pick up and the hind end should like, okay, we're gonna go. But then it should take back over. And it should not be then that the hind end is trying to finish carrying the front end around while the rest of the time riding. Okay. Next photo. They're not in order. Here is another horse. Walmart's photo decided to cut off the legs, but you can see where that horse started, into the middle, into then, how much that horse literally...
Where did it start? Which one?
The top one? Yep.
Okay.
So if you watch, pay attention to this part here.
Okay.
It's like it grew, like...
Oh, I get you. I see now, yeah.
And you can see that the position of the horse's head is not like this. It's more rounded. Mm-hmm. It's rounded. But you can also see a lot of these lines here are going away. You can also see the back has changed. I mean, look how, like, that horse has 0 withers there. Mm-hmm. Now we have a big wither.
I get you, yeah.
So those are some big changes. The other thing that the thoracic sling can do is change their way of going, from being very short-strided to have greater reach and greater depth. This is the foxtrotter I had in training. So you can see this spring, how close he was and how toed out he was.
Yeah.
A lot less.
And how long did that take?
That's February to April.
Wow.
And he's still being rode. That was not being like specific, these are the only things we're doing. And we can see a change in his body, in his posture. It's more relaxed. Because not only does... Yep. And I mean, it's hard to see in the top picture, and he was like really furry. But the thing about biomechanics is when you are working with the body, and you start changing the body, it starts unwinding all the tight muscles and pinched nerves and things like that. So you start seeing behavior issues go away. You start seeing the body develop and become more smooth looking overall. This, that picture of that little white horse, I mean, I don't know if you guys notice just how much better overall, just from first glance, how much better the bottom horse looks. Without even knowing anything. Like if you just look at that horse just looks better. His musculature is more developed and it's better, and he just looks smooth to the eye. That is one thing I noticed. I started doing, back downstate, I had a body worker, started doing Masterson method, and at first I was like, whatever, you know, and I didn't understand it, but I did know that my horses were better afterwards. So I was like, okay, they're better, they feel better, they look better. And then Jackie was kind enough to start, like, we do before and afters, and then she would point out the differences. So I was starting quite a few years ago to already get an eye to see, like, function versus dysfunction. I had no idea what was happening, but I could at least notice the difference. She'd be like, do something, and then I'd be like, oh, look, I can see the difference. And now, you know, like Bethany will come and I can look at a picture, and, or even if she gets just done on the wall, I can see a difference almost right away. So start training your eye to see dysfunction.
Well,
Because
I think part of it too is when you're looking at a horse and you see it narrow. I mean, I notice the difference in Lily. It's not always maturity that makes them do this. It's more that sling that's kind of.
it does.
helping.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you're gonna have like wider horses and narrow
Right,
horses,
right,
just
right,
like for their conformation breed. I
Right,
mean,
right.
your thoroughbred is not gonna be as wide as like your old foundation quarter horses. It's just the way their body's built, or not as wide as a draft horse, you know. But you're just gonna notice that overall more bulked up, firm presence. Okay. And then we're gonna notice here's a Derby, the thoroughbred. So this is when she came in. This is, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. We're gonna notice that we have big time pectoral development. This picture's kind of dark, but you can see that, like, she basically's got boobies now. The darker picture is the later picture. So you can actually see that that horse has more development. So, all right, I will start drawing some things. You guys can look at those if you want, like a little closer up. I'm gonna grab my book. So if you want a biomechanics book,
Okay.
this is a good book. It talks about like the front end, back end, the muscles, how they work, what they're working for. Good book. All right. See if one of my pens work.
I know, I need to hear, that's a good idea to take a picture of that. And I'm thinking, I'm not gonna remember that.
Okay. So, please excuse my drawing art, but so I have our horse. I'm gonna draw a horse. Okay, but I'm not an artist.
I'm going to.
Trying to draw the next step. Okay. Not great drawing, but it gets the picture. muscles in the horse, but the ones we're mainly going to really worry about are a couple. We're going to worry about the trapezius muscle. Okay? So the trapezius muscle is here. This is the withers. Okay? So we're going to worry about that one. And I'll draw the front side of the horse too. So. And then our sternum bone is there. Okay. And then our spinal column is here. Okay. And then the other one we're going to worry about is the brachiocephalicus. This one comes along here, kind of like this. And then this one is the sternoccephalicus. Can't talk. Right in front. Your brachiocephalicus goes down into the front of the shoulder. And in here, we've got our pectoral muscles, like this, and then our serratus ventralis, like so. Okay.
And this is the one you're focusing on or targeting to develop, is that what you're saying?
Yes, in the pectorals.
In the pectorals, yeah.
Yep. So when we ask our horse to drop their head, okay, you guys are all familiar with like long and low terminology, or like have you guys heard of that term, long and low? Like you know what it is? So basically, you know, for those of you who don't, it's where you ask the horse to reach down, drop its head, open up its throat latch, and reach down. Okay? When the horse drops their head, obviously, there's an endorphin release for your horse, right? They will find relaxation, you know, softening, all those things. But when the horse drops their head, find my notes here. They will be developing, when you drop the head, it's targeting the pecs and the serratus ventralis. Okay? So that's like building that muscle up. What it's also doing is engaging the core. So when the head drops, so you're engaging the core, you're stretching them over the top because the nuchal ligament, or nuchal ligament, this is this ligament that runs across the top of the horse's neck like this, ties into the withers. And then we have the supraspinatus ligament that goes along the back. Okay, that connects to like your spinal processes. When the horse puts their head down, they stretch this nuchal ligament, which stretches the spinal processes forward, creates space. So like a horse with kissing spine, really, really good. Like you want them to always put their head down and reach forward like that because it's going to open up those spinal processes all the time. Yep. So, but if, you know, there's always that people say, well, you know, you put their head down for so long, they're heavy on the forehand. If they put their head down for too long, yes, they are heavy on their forehand. And if you make them put their head basically below wither, for every horse is going to find their happy point. I mean, like the big thoroughbred derby, she moves around just kind of with her like head below her withers. If that's where she's happy, yeah, she's very like just naturally built, just wants to move very level like that. So I don't really fight her, but a horse that isn't going to carry their head below, sitting there and trying to force and put them in that position to be low, like all the time, is not healthy. It doesn't mean that we can't create them to do it, to want to do it, to make them feel better while we're riding them, or working them or handling them. But also, we want to remember that if we do it for an extended a period of time, all the time, we can do a little bit of damage just because we're so heavy on the forehand, and we can overstretch that I can't say it, supraspinatus muscle or tendon, and we can actually cause some damage there just by overstretching that, okay? So we don't want to do it forever, or we can do it for shorter, or extend, or do it for periods of time, but we don't want to come out and like, this is all we're going to do for like 2 years. Probably not a good thing. But when we do long and low and have our horse put their head down and reach down, when we build these up, when the horse's head comes back up to a natural level, that strengthening can help them be lighter on the front end. Okay? So it's not just about that. So this is, and it also helps open up the pole. So like a lot of horses that have pole pressure, pole stress, tension in their pole, this will help because we kind of want that horse to kind of hang his head like a hinge joint, you know? Want that head to reach out. He's gonna be relaxed we want him to relax his pole and stretch it out, particularly when you're riding under saddle too. But in the beginning on the ground when you're teaching this, you just kind of want that horse to stretch this out, reach down. Because what happens is when our horse has our head upright all the time like this, they're putting a lot of tension in that brachiocephalicus muscle, which comes up to their pole. And when we ride them and they're using that muscle to pull themselves forward all the time and lift themselves up with that muscle, then that's why we have so much pole pressure or pole tension, is because they're not using. We want, when the head comes down, and we can try to get some of the pressure and tension off this muscle, the brachiocephalicus, then it starts going to the serratus ventralis, the trapezius, because that's also going to lift with that lift, and the pectorals. So, because we want the horse to have their center of gravity back here, not here. Okay, we always hear about like, everybody's, use the hind end to push through, drive with the hind, drive with the hind. But we forget about this. We forget about that. And that we have to teach that to lift first, before. Let's see here. And then we have like a couple, there's a bajillion different muscles in the horse's shoulder. But the other thing we want to think about, the horse has like a couple different pectorals. They've got, these are called the descending pectorals. Then we've got the transverse pectorals. Then if this was our horse's belly, and this was the front leg, we would have the ascending pectorals. Okay? So like if your horse gets cinchy, or, doesn't gets kind of owie there, it's because their ascending pectorals are sore. And those are the muscles that when that horse lifts his leg like this, those are the muscles that are getting worked. So a couple reasons you can have tightness there in your ascending pectorals is your girth's too tight. You're riding with too tight a girth, or your girth is bruising the horse there, or they have heel pain. So no hoof, no horse. So heel pain, because of the way they're standing, can cause soreness there. Still mad that she has to be separated. Still upset.
Does she pace like Peppy when you separate?
The other thing, so who all knows that, okay, Cheryl, I'm going to have you draw, or you can't see anything. Where, if you're going to say where the horse's spine goes up to their head, like if you're going to draw the horse's spine, just draw a line from the back all the way up to the ears.
I'm not sure it goes all the way up to the head.
It does.
Does? All the way up to the head?
But where do you think it goes?
To the head?
Yeah, where do you think, where's the horse's neck? Cervical, or, yeah, cervical.
Cervical spine, okay. Well, I'm gonna say the brain has to be, there has to be like a C1, C2,
Mm-hmm.
so it has to be close to the skull. It has to be close to the skull if the skull sits on
So
it.
does anybody wanna try another drawing?
I would go about an inch or two down.
Down? Yeah, we'll say that's an inch or two.
Nope. So your horse's spine,
Probably stops right here.
nope, goes like this.
Yes.
Oh, I get you. Oh.
Yeah, so there's no spinal process that's here.
I
There's-
get you.
Your vertebrae aren't here.
Guess
So
I
you're-
never thought about it.
Yeah, I know, right? I know, we
Skeletal. Yeah, you
I
want
know.
skeleton.
I'm thinking of a human. I'm like, well, we'll follow the neck.
So it does, it comes down and it's gonna go down between the shoulders. So we have our, like, the cervical is your neck vertebrae, then we have the thoracic vertebrae, right? So, you guys ever heard of like pinched nerves or nerve impingements? Okay, do you guys know horses could get those? They can. Most of the time, there are so many studies coming out now that a lot of the time, bad behavior that people are having issues with their horses is caused from either pinched nerves or soreness or the horse being out. But pinched nerves can cause undiagnosed lameness, it can cause sporadic bucking, it can cause ulcers, it can cause, anxiety, it can cause like so much stuff. A lot of head flipping we see, that's like nerves firing. It's not, it can go, there's other things that cause that too, but that's one thing. Sometimes people try to diagnose it as something else, but it's just like a pinched nerve all the time that's just firing and the horse just keeps flipping his head every time he feels it. So right here, between the shoulders is the cervicothoracic junction. So it's like where the thoracic vertebrae meet the cervical vertebrae. And there's a big, huge bundle of nerves that comes through there. And when the horse is always like up like this or rode behind the vertical a lot or rode with overflexion, what can happen is that gets pinched. And so we can have a lot of pinched nerves in the front end right in that area because there's so many muscles and everything going through there. Well, when the horse's head comes down, it kind of opens that little area up a little bit. And so you can start alleviating some of that stuff just by changing posture. And the other reason I started getting into this stuff is, with me training horses, I'd be training horses and I'm like, okay, I'm like trying to force this horse in a position. I'm trying to like pull him in this position. I'm trying to put this horse in this position. Or I can just tell they're not strong enough, or this horse is acting out. I don't know why. And I was like, always felt like I was missing something. Well, when I found out more about biomechanics, I was like, this explains so much about why we're having these issues. It's because the horse feels incapable of doing it, basically. They physically can't do it, or they hurt, or there's undiagnosed things that, even some vets don't know what's going on, and it's just inside the body. So it's just crazy how much it can, what it can do. So by lowering the horse's head, it lengthens the neck and back, strengthens the pectorals and serratus ventralis, and engages the core. So that does that's a lot for like one exercise. So the other thing that we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to mainly talk about the front end today, but hind end. You wanna hand me a rag over there, Lori? My lovely horse drawing. Wipe off?
So this is interesting, the front end, because I have a range, and even when I bought him, he did very well when he was shown for a novice horse breed. But I always felt like something with his front end. You know what I mean? I always felt like he was heavy on his front end.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt that about Peppy.
And now this makes more sense, doesn't
It
it?
makes so much. It's like, oh, click, click, click.
I know, it's like, sometimes it's like, oh, like even just me studying for this, like it's like
Yeah.
pieces. I was going through this book and I had been meaning to go through that just to kind of fill in some pieces for myself too. And it's like, because I want to know, okay, if this happens, this is why, or this is what's causing this, or, you know, if we do this, this is what's happening internally, like this is what's happening inside. You know, because then you know more. You're like, okay, well, we put the horse's head on, well, why? Well, this is all the benefits that can happen. These are all the things that can happen if we do it or we don't do it. You know, if we do it too much, it's not good, but it's something we still want to remember to do.
And at that saddle clinic that we went to,
Mhm.
she was talking about some of those front muscles, and I can't do words over 5 letters.
I can't even pronounce half of them.
She was talking about the pressure on one of those muscles is actually connected to their lungs.
Oh.
So it can cause respiratory issues.
Yeah.
And I thought, that
Yeah.
was interesting, you know,
Yeah.
because of your saddle fitting where you need to make sure your saddle is, because, and I didn't realize that some of those withers muscles were connected to their lungs, which is what she brought up.
And that might be the serratus ventralis. I'm not sure. It didn't talk about it in that book, so I'm not 100% sure, but it wouldn't surprise me that it's something, because like the muscles are like onion layers, you know, you've got like the outside layers we see, but then there's like the underneath layers and all that good stuff. So it's just kind of interesting. But the one muscle here in the back end, two muscles I'm going to talk about. The one are like horse's butt. So here's his back, his butt, his tail, low tail set on his back, and then down to the hock. Okay, and we have the front leg coming up, and then our belly. Okay, so we obviously, and then internally here, we've got like our spine, you know, that's coming up here like this, and then chains into the sacral joint, or sacral bones that go down to the tail. Then we've got like our hip bone that comes up here like this, and then it attaches down here, the femur, and then down into the hock. Okay. So a lot of these muscles here are glute muscle, horse glute muscles. Okay, there's a couple different kinds or different names for different ones, but those can get, a lot of horses like Hickory, he's very tight in those because of the way he holds himself. So by helping with long and low, they reach underneath themselves so you can get a nice stretch. Doing that more, so you can get a little more stretch, they're gonna reach underneath themselves because you're engaging all these obliques as well, we're lifting those up. The other thing that we're gonna talk about, that, you ever seen a horse with like they're like a little bit of, it's like they have a ridge here of muscle. And then then it goes into the croup. It's like overdeveloped in the back, like the lower back. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. So there's this lovely muscle here that basically, well, we have it too, but it's really deep. And this kind of runs in here like that. Okay, it's going to attach to it flexes the lumbosacral and hip joints. Basically, initiates for so the psoas or I think it's the psoas muscle group. There's like 3 muscles in there. We have a psoas, which I looked up the other day because I was like, what the heck is that? And when I do my rider biomechanics in February, we're going to talk more about that because it's based off the person, not the horse, and how our psoas affects us to ride or flexibility, that type of stuff, our pelvis, cool stuff. But anyways, horse has psoas, okay? It's really, really deep. It's hard to palpate. It's hard, if there's a lot of tension, it's hard to fix. But when we have psoas tension, you're going to see this overdevelopment in the lower back, okay? The psoas is used to, like, they're huge, like, really active in the canter. So if you really want to work the psoas muscle, you're going to work it in the canter. But if your horse is undeveloped, you're going to be overusing your psoas, which is going to cause your lower back pain. It's very important that your psoas is, because they do say once there's a lot of tension, it's hard. It's like hard for a massage person to go in there and release it. So you don't really want to injure it in the first place if you can help it. So making sure that you have a lot of warm-up time, walking and stretching. And here's the thing, stretching's okay as long as you don't overstretch and as long as you're not stretching a horse that's already in dysfunction. If your horse is already hurting, and I just recently was listening to a lady, Celeste Lazarus is who I've been following, and she's talking about like doing stretches and stuff like that, and how people are like, well, why is it bad and why is it good? And why is it, well, first of all, like, they talk about carrot stretches, like they go here and here and here and all this stuff. She was saying that when the horse isn't properly developed, basically, when you're doing these side-to-side stretches over and over, the cervical thoracic is basically just clanging and banging around in there. And she says she sees a ton of C6 and C7 arthritis, which is basically right there. So just remember, like, what you're doing, is it right at that time? It may not be a wrong thing, it just may not be right for that time. But with the psoas, just make sure you have a good warm-up, and that you're not riding your horse behind the vertical. You guys all know what riding behind the vertical is? Okay. For those of you who don't, it's basically the horse's head is tucked in. It's not straight. It's tucked in. So tucking behind the vertical, not good. Bad, bad, bad. So we don't want to do that. Let's see. The other thing I'm going to talk about real quick, and then we're going to go get our horses. We're going to talk about the hyoid. You guys all know what the hyoid is? Yes? Okay. You guys know, like, how, I know some of you guys know how important it is, but, like, super important. So the hyoid,
Yes, I'm not sure where it is on a horse. I'm thinking, where's it on a horse?
So the hyoid is a little bone in the horse's head, jaw area, that is attached to the tongue, and also like the TMJ. But the hyoid, believe it or not, is also attached to muscles that go all the way through the entire body. So it's not just like in the head, it affects their whole body. The hyoid also affects their balance. It's attached to the tongue, which is also why you should never ever pull on the horse's tongue. You can like you ever see a dentist like take the tongue and pull it out to the side? No, big nose. You can like break the hyoid, damage it, then your horse has got balance issues. and a slew of other problems, trust me. My horse has hyoid injury, so I know. But, anyway, so the hyoid, we're gonna talk about abduction and adduction real quick. The horse's head, jaw, ears. Okay, so here's the horse's tongue, right? Here's our tongue. So the hyoid, there's two, so there's your left hyoid and right hyoid. It's gonna come up here, come down, like this. She's probably just checking for grain in the bucket.
Oh my god.
So, this is the hyoid, it's in the
Oh,
head.
that's big.
Well, I mean, it's not that big, but
Oh, okay. Alright.
anyway, this is the placement it is in the head.
Okay.
So it's in your horse's head, and it helps with it's up by the temporal mandibular joint. But we're also gonna show you guys how to do a hyoid release on your horse today. So that way you can do it on yourself. There's like 2 different ways, but I'm gonna show you guys the safe way. And then the other thing we're gonna chat about real quick is abduction and adduction. Basically, we're worried more about abduction. So abduction, just remember, you're being abducted by aliens. You're being taken away. Okay, and adduction is you're adding to the body. Okay, that's how I remember. You're being taken away. And abduction, so, is really a lot of lateral movement in horses, if you think about it. So stepping out to the side, crossing over, that's all abduction. And then, so this would be abduction, adduction, abduction, adduction, okay? The main thing that abduction does is it helps lengthens and strengthens the pectoral muscles and brings awareness to independent movement of each leg.
So like you're talking about crossing over. is
Yes,
that
but
what
I'm
you're
not talking about the entire, I'm talking about literally teaching your horse to move one leg
talking-
and then standing there.
Oh,
And then one leg and standing there. Because we want the horse to do this instead of this as the first step. We want them to take the abduction first before they do the adduction. When we start bringing self-awareness to the horse and their body, it's strength. It's kind of like doing, like, you go to the gym and you just work one muscle set. You're just doing like bicep curls and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna do like leg day or shoulder day, whatever. That's kind of what you're doing. You're teaching abduction. So you're like, okay, can you move this muscle? Can you do this first? Because when we do that, it's going to strengthen those individualized muscles, our pectorals, and that's going to help give an increased length and stride, which for a lot of us, I mean, dressage people, that's really been important. But at the same time, we still don't want a short little choppy horse. We want that horse to be able to reach and stretch further out. So, the abduction is really important first, especially like in the turnaround for reining. We want the first step to be this. We don't want them to do this. So when I'm training, when we pick up the inside rein, we want the first step to be out. So a horse that has bad abduction is not going to do that very well. They're gonna like just do it really short and choppy and step on their own feet. So it's important to do that. And it also helps with under saddle when we want that horse to doing lateral work, we want them to take that step first.
that makes sense.
Make sense? All right. So anybody have any questions? So when we come in, we're going to start talking about the long and low and how to do that, what we're looking for, where to start. We're going to talk about pole release, hyoid release, and then we're also going to try to cover how to start teaching long and low to get it into the bridle. Not just, because we eventually want to ride the horse like that, And if we don't know how to teach them how to do it under saddle, how are we gonna do that? So that's what we're gonna do. I don't care who you use, Brenda.
You use Maverick if you want, and I'll do Julia.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think I'll do Harley.
She's otherwise detained.
Yeah.
Sounds like
She's gonna be
worked out
preoccupied,
right
yeah.
now.
She's just mad. She's got
Who are
this-
you bringing
I think
in?
some of that's Holly. Streaming for her.
Holly and Devo were both calling for her. I noticed. They were calling for her.
She, for the low man on a totem pole, back in the day, she sure has managed to,
Come to the high
Under-
point in
yeah.
life, yes, she has.
yeah.
Also, now she has to suffer the consequences
Yeah.
of being.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Although Julia will be hard to